Welcome back to the Endeavors AI podcast. I'm Collin McKee, founder of Endeavors AI. This is my opportunity to talk to founders and operators about what AI actually looks like, minus the hype. Today, my guest is Michael Woolf of Boon Legal, a virtual flat fee based law firm built for entrepreneurs. Before law, Michael was a tech entrepreneur in the game world, so he's been working with AI a lot longer than most lawyers. Michael, welcome.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Cool. So I wanted to start with the path because it's not the usual one. You came into law kind of sideways. Walk me through how you got into the game from the game world into the firm.
Yeah, well, it was obviously not a direct normal course. So I spent a number of years, about 20 plus years in the game industry, working on everything from art to design to directing products and getting into the executive suite, partnering in companies and so forth. And throughout my time in that industry, obviously the game industry is one that uses a lot of forward tech. So things like AI, high-end graphics work, what would become UX, UI design, etc. That all rolled out of that industry in a way that had us thinking about always, what's the next thing to conquer? What's the next way to make this a little bit more of a realistic simulation? What's the next way to get this where it's playing with the player of the game as opposed to just being an antagonist. So a lot of that time was spent just really experimenting with all sorts of things that could be done depending on what the tech need was. And we didn't label stuff. We didn't, I mean, certainly we talked about AI as being AI, but we didn't label things like, oh, we have to introduce this technology. It was always what serves the product. And if that's the right thing to serve the product, then that's where we're going to go. And I kind of took a little bit of that with me into the legal world as well.
So you had mentioned on our first conversation a deal that changed how you saw all of this. Can you tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that?
Well, if you spend any time in business at all, I think what most people find is that it's the failures, it's the setbacks that tend to linger more, but also tend to teach more. I was working with a company one time, and we were working on a piece of our own IP, which at the time in the game industry, you sold the idea to a publisher distributor, and more often than not, they would back your development and along with the distribution deal. And those distribution deals at the time, they generally came with a set ROI. So, for example, there's about $1.5 million to just press the discs and put them on the shelf. It was $500,000 for our development costs. And so, they're looking at $2 million. They get 100% of the revenues towards that at the beginning. And then there's a 4x ROI. So the next 8 million at 80% going to them and 20% returning as royalties to the developer. And then once they reach that set ROI, it would flip. And so the developer would get 80%, the publisher would get 20%. So a lot of those games could be a fairly good payday in royalties for those teams when they were bringing their own IP and developing it along with a partner for distribution. In the case of this product, we did a $500,000 deal that ended up making somewhere between 53 to 56 million, depending on what numbers you look at in the marketplace. And instead of getting what should have been, upwards of 45 plus 50 million, whatever it was for that, our company got zero in royalties. And on reflection, I was thinking about, like, why did that happen? And it seems to me that it was really essentially a single sentence that was missing out of that particular contract that caused that. The thing that stopped me further was the fact that we had an attorney on that project that was helping to negotiate and pay for the deal. And so I'm thinking, why is that? Why is it the case that we missed out because of, we did the thing right, quote unquote. And so, when I thought about it, it seems to be that the only answer I can come up with is that this guy was a well regarded entertainment attorney, but not one that had made his experience within the game industry. He was doing film and television. And those subtle nuanced differences made all the difference. So about 14 months later, when I'm now at another company who was a direct competitor in the same product line, within about 14 months, we delivered 2, 3 more products. And the two partners there offered me a partnership and they said, "Hey, we'd love for you to be part of this." And I said, I'm grateful. B, thank you. And C, there's no way in hell I'm doing this unless one of the three of us gets some sort of legal education, because we can't let these 70 families that rely on us to do our jobs right, we can't let them down because of our ignorance. And so that sort of got the ball rolling, if you will. But yeah, you'll remember those things easier.
Wow. All right. So you put your business hat back on and you asked, what kind of firm would I want to walk into? And with building Boon Legal, what did you set out to kill on the traditional law firm model?
Yeah, well, I spent some time between law school and Boon Legal with a giant law firm. When we talk about big law, they were the 30th largest in the country at the time, if I'm not mistaken. And what I learned in that time was that the people in big law are fantastic. I mean, I have some great friends in that area, but the structures of what's been taught to big law over the last 150 years meant that all of my frustration, what I crassly call the "oh shit" moment, like, how much is this call going to cost? How much is it going to cost for three red lines on this document? Those moments were ones that were frustrating as a consumer, and they were quite a bit more frustrating as a provider because it's just simply the way that the whole structure had been set up. It's nobody's fault today, except for maybe perhaps a lack of creativity about how to change things or a lack of business knowledge. I stepped into it basically saying, like, the biggest frustrations I have on both sides of that ledger is communication is just horrible. And so the first thing was, how do we fix our communication? How do we make it where picking up the phone isn't going to tie your stomach in knots because of the cost? How do we put together a way for the entrepreneur and the business to have somebody learn about the nuances of that business, to appreciate what it is that will take the business forward, pull the business back, not because it's something in that vertical, but because it's something in that business where there's a catch there, there's a nuance, there's a particularity, and it's very hard to do that when you're charging 6 minutes at a time. People don't want to pay for you to learn the nuances. On the other hand, how do you protect somebody if you don't? So that was step one. Step two was getting rid of the hourly billing model. It's both an absurdity for the provider in terms of it tends to work against efficiency, both financial efficiency and also time efficiency, but also for the business owner. There's the speed of business and the speed of law, and they're not the same. So, how do we front load for the businesses? How do we front load their priority as opposed to where we sit? Those types of things. So I just went about going, what would I want? What would I want in business? I want to know, what is it going to cost me? When's it going to get done? Is somebody going to take the time to really learn about me, or am I just going to sit here and wait for whatever drops and go, okay, well, I suppose that's the way it's supposed to be. And none of that felt right.
So it leads perfectly into the next question to talk us through your fee model, which is a flat fee plus subscription, and kind of explain how that changes the relationship with the client as opposed to the traditional.
Sure. Well, I'll start with just the flat fee model, right? Somebody comes in, hey, I need to get XYZ thing. Can you help me out with it? And okay, we decide, sure, we'll explore that. Yep, looks like we can help you out. And here's what it will cost for that thing to get done. Well, when we do that, it's a really simple thing, because they can either accept that, negotiate back, or reject it. But in either case, once they accept that, once the client says, "Okay, great, we've agreed," we don't have the issue that a lot of folks struggle with, not just legal, but "Oh, well, here's our billing, here's the hourly." And I mean, I saw this in software dev when I was doing it in more business situated software development. Sitting there bickering over an invoice. I've never had that. We're now in our ninth year. It's never come up once, because people aren't going to argue with what they've already agreed to on the front end, as long as it's not changing. right? And as long as everybody thinks it's a fair cost for that product or service. So that's number one. Number two is just because we call it a flat fee doesn't mean that it doesn't get the love that other things get. So, if it needs to be, so, say we're doing a contract and it needs to be, finessed or nuanced, that's okay. And we expect that, and that's built into that model. On the recurring monthly plans, those are there. They're not a requirement that we have of any of our clients, and we don't run those with some sort of 6 month, 12-month requirement or anything like that. It's month to month, and people can come or use it or not. But it provides ongoing service with enough service parts for each area or each growth stage of the business that they can probably get 70, 80, or even more of their legal covered under that one expense, and it's a budgetable thing. And for those folks that are on those plans, what they tell us is, it's not even getting the services, hey, every month we got to use all these services, that matters to them. It's the fact that they know what the cost is. They know they can pick up the phone anytime. They know we're never going to charge them to have a conversation. And in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a security company, and he was having an issue because some of his clients were coming back to him going, "Hey, we've been with you for 2, 3 years, and we're just not seeing the need to have all this security. Nothing's going on. We're not having any problems. Nobody's trying to get in our buildings." And he's like, "Yeah, well, that's because it's working." And I think our clients at least appreciate, yeah, our conversations go from the what's the mess du jour to what is the strategy of the next 3 to 5 years pretty quickly because of that. So there's a lot of value in that to our clients.
That's excellent. I love that little story. It's like, yeah, nothing's breaking, so we're gonna get rid of no.
Yeah.
It's doing exactly
it
what it should do.
and it's a tough one for folks because, like, my friend Alex, who has that company, he's looking at it going, well, what am I supposed to do here? The fact that there's a deterrent, whether it's a guy standing there as an armed guard, or whether it's protecting your contracts or whatever, if there's a deterrence to bad behavior from some other party, and so they're not behaving badly, it's hard to show value in or to prove what doesn't exist, right? So yeah, there is something, but it's funny. I mean, it's funny to think about it, but it's a tough one.
Okay, so let's kind of pivot towards AI because that's kind of the reason for the show.
Sure.
So you've been working with it for a long time in the gaming industry. You were
Mhm.
doing it well past, before ChatGPT, probably before anybody knew anything about it. Where does AI live within Boon Legal?
AI is a pencil. Right. That's the simple answer. It's a new pencil. AI it's what you make of it. Just the way the printing press or the typewriter or the word processor, or name your tech. This is not it like anything else. Let me say it this way, Colin. Like anything else, everything can be abused if we choose to. Right. I am not one who believes in some idealistic view of AI. It has an extraordinary possible capability, let me say it that way, of causing great damage, right? But it also has an equally great possibility of tremendous change for the better. So, when it comes to any tool, and this was true from the day I started, when we come up with something, recognizing that, hey, we're doing this thing repeatedly, we have to ask two questions. Number one is this brain work or is it finger work? Right? If it's brain work, we're going to work on it. If it's finger work, we're going to try to come up with a process to take care of the finger work, right? So, really good example, there are certain types of contracts that we work on fairly regularly. And those contracts, there's parts of those contracts that are vastly, let's just say they're moldable around a particular use case. Right. So take, for example, a master services agreement. They're functionally all the same in terms of what they do, but that doesn't mean they're the same in terms of the application that they're doing it for. So we can take we can take some of the drafting parts of that job and let the AI handle putting together pieces of stuff while we focus on which pieces and how to finesse them afterwards. We use it very much not as a final product tool, but as a development along the way tool. And I think a lot of folks are trying to use AI to produce an end product, and I think that that's probably premature in a lot of situations, because what it really excels at is getting 80%, it's the old 80/20 rule. Get the 80% done that's going to take the most time, and spend the 20% of the work with the 80% of my time, in order to make that the best for this particular use case or this particular client.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's a force multiplier, good, bad,
Yes.
or indifferent. So, so one thing that you said in our first conversation is it's not about the output, it's the instructions. So, talk a little bit more about that because that's very, very important. It's pivotal.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I was talking about there is we often are trying to get to an output stage. We want to go, okay, I'm gonna hit this button, and the Claude or ChatGPT or what have you, they're gonna go off and do this thing for me. And there's a lot it can do. There's a lot it can learn. I mean, and there's scores of folks out there that are doing some great work with trying to teach people how do you think about using this stuff for the basics. But we're looking at it from the point of view of, this is a new pencil in the tool of a new person, right? Think about it as, somebody who might have an academic. I mean, a law is a really good example with a law student that graduates, passes the bar, and they start working. Well, they don't they don't at that point know how to practice law, right? They know how to pass a test that says they're allowed to, but they don't know how to do the practice part yet. So we expect that they're going to have a certain amount of basic knowledge, but they're going to lack the context and the experience to apply that knowledge in the same way that somebody with 5, 10, 15, 20 years experience would. So I just think about the AI in the same fashion, right? This is somebody who once said it. AI today is like a 5-year-old that happens to know nuclear physics, and there's some truth to that, right? I mean, it knows academically how to do quite a bit, right? Because it looks it up. But the context of how to do it, the purpose behind doing it, the choices that we make because of just the simple foundational elements, right? The frameworks behind things that it doesn't know. So we need to focus on setting onto tasks that are either extremely well documented as to how you want things to turn out, say like you would with a product development document for an app that you want to build. You're going to lay out all of the details, and tell this button goes here and that button goes there, and this is what the screen looks like, and you get all kinds of details. That's one way to go. The other way to go is to go, here's what I'm looking to do, figure out how you want to do it. Either way, don't expect the right answer, right? What you're trying to get to is not the right answer. What you're trying to get to is the right process, right? Because it's all about making good decisions that lead you to the good results. So if you teach it, okay, here's why you're going to do something, or hey, you want to do this thing, how would you think about doing it? And it comes back to you and says, well, I might do this, this, and this, and you go, okay, great, let's see what that works like, but this last piece, let's tweak that little thing before you do, those types of things. That's no different than working with a less experienced person. And I think that's the trick that people are missing, is they're trying to look for, some sort of magic bullet or magic wand to make everything work. And there is none.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, uh, I've heard it equated to a new employee so many times, and it's so very true. You need to give it the right instructions, the right guidance. If not, if you're expecting perfection, your expectations are incorrect. They
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so
If I may, real quick,
yeah.
years ago, when I first became a manager, the owner of the company I was working for, he said, listen, the only thing I'm going to tell you about management, because you don't want to do what I do. He started there. You don't want to do what I do. The only thing I can tell you about management is you get to tell people what to do, how to do it, or when you want it. don't get all three. And you shouldn't really do more than one, to be honest, but sometimes we have to. And I think there's some great wisdom in that, but it applies towards the AI as well.
Mhm. 100%. So for the listening audience, a lot of them are obviously curious about AI. A lot of them are cautious, and they need to be. For someone who knows it matters and they're kind of nervous about getting into wading into the pool of AI, where should they
Mhm.
start and what should they avoid?
Where should they start? What should they avoid? Good questions. Well, let's go with the avoid. That's the easy one. Avoid sharing your data, right? It's not that we don't want to contribute to the way this thing learns. There's plenty of people contributing to it. I'll give you two reasons why you should avoid that. Number one is because once it's out there, it's out there, right? In whatever form it's out there, it's out there. I'm told that if one wanted to, one could actually pinpoint any document or a piece of information within the tools. I don't know that. I haven't tried it. It's not interesting to me, but I've heard that before. But don't put out what they used to say about text messages. They used to say about email. Don't put in writing what you don't want to be published on the front page of the newspaper. That's one thing. I would also avoid well, like we said, avoid expectations that it's going to be a perfect thing. It's not. What I think you want to really look towards is, you know, let's help to develop a process and figure out along the way, what are the steps along the way that you need to do, and what steps can you hand off to anybody else. It doesn't matter whether it's that anybody is an AI or a person. What can you hand off that's not going to harm the end result? And those are the things I think that you should be looking for as potentials for the AI to tackle. So that's one thing. In terms of starting off, first things first is I would start to focus on using the AI as a partner to have a conversation with. And I'll give you a really quick example. I write articles on stuff, and I've started using AI as a way to bounce ideas off myself, right? To have what is the equivalent of a sparring partner. And I've been able to, over time, teach the AI to go, oh, you know what? Remember that I like to do this. Remember that I like to have things done this way. I'll feed it a bunch of the things that I've written and ask it to go through and, really analyze the way that I write in different contexts at that, and come up with a a guideline for writing in that particular style. I have a writing style that I use for thought leadership articles, for example. That's vastly different than the writing style I use for just basic emails, which is again vastly different than what I use for, say, writing a contract. Um, and so I've taught the AI, hey, these are the different styles that I use. And once it's learned those different styles, and most of these AIs, you can have it go through and parse a bunch of information and then save off. This is what that looks like. And over time, it starts to learn preferences. And once you start that, it's really then simple to say, well, here's a text thread or an email thread. Take a look at this and just, in this voice, draft an initial first draft reply. Really simple stuff to do. But again, it's the 80% of that work that takes 20% of the time, and vice versa. We spend so much time in the first draft. It's like, just give me the first draft so I can rewrite it. Or in the subtle words of Ernest Hemingway, the first draft of everything is shit. So, don't worry about it. Just get it on paper. And if you can use a tool to help you get there in seconds, then you can massage it. Then you can say, oh, you know what? I actually like to draft an email this way, or so forth. That's where you start to teach it what you do. And once you start teaching it what you can do, it's very simple after that to go, oh, well, if I'm teaching it how to do this and it can actually do that repeatedly, well, then I can use that regularly. And so, we here keep We keep a list of GPT instructions. We keep custom GPTs that we make after working with something for a while to produce it and make sure that it produces the results that we want, consistently. We'll turn that into a GPT that everybody can use to do that same thing. And so those are the kind of things. It's just take it in steps, and it's not much different than what you would do with a new employee. Like, okay, well, what can you show me today? And okay, great, you got that. Now let's work on the next thing.
100%. So what I'm hearing is just take the time to teach it. In that process, you'll learn yourself, what it has to feedback to give back to you. To just take the time, and I think that's great advice. A lot of people, we're a culture of wanting the quick answer, the easy button, and with this force multiplier, you really do need to take the time and be careful with it, and teach it what you want it to do. So that's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have to onboard it, right? It doesn't require. I mean, it's a teach as you go. It's a mentorship kind of, as opposed to a instructional.
Right. Awesome. Well, Michael, this has been a great episode. I really appreciate it. Where should people go to learn more about Boon Legal and reach out to you guys?
Well, thank you for asking. Yeah, we're at www.boonlegal.com, and you can reach us there. You can send us an email at hello@boonlegal.com. We'd be glad to say hi and see if we can help.
Cool. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes. So that's Michael Woolf, founder of Boon Legal. Find the firm at boonlegal.com. If you have got something out of this, please follow the show. And if you're trying to figure out where AI fits in your business without going off the rails, that's what we do here at Endeavors AI. Find me at endeavorsai.com. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next one.